The ship came out of hyperspace like a wounded animal. It tumbled and spun, leaving a trail of smoke and fire behind it. The hull was torn open in a dozen places. The engines were dying, but somehow, impossibly, it was still moving toward Earth. Commander Sarah Walsh watched from the bridge of the defense station Unity 7. Her crew had already locked weapons on the vessel. One word from her, and it would become dust. "It's not attacking," said Lieutenant Torres, studying his screens. "It's not even trying to evade. I think it's trying to land. On Earth." Walsh frowned. "With those wounds, it'll burn up in atmosphere. I don't think the pilot cares, Commander." Walsh made a decision. "Send rescue shuttles. I want to know who's inside that ship and why they came here." The rescue team found the alien 30 minutes later. He was still alive, but barely. His name, they would later learn, was Korath Sen. He was a Velith, a species humanity had only met twice before at distant trading posts. His body was covered in scales that should have been bright blue and silver. Now they were burned black and cracked like old paint. Green blood leaked from wounds that would not stop bleeding, but his eyes were still sharp. And his voice, though weak, carried the weight of someone who had traveled very far to deliver a message. "Take me to your leaders," he said in broken but understandable human language. "I must speak to them. The survival of your entire species depends on it." They brought him to Geneva, to the great hall where the United Earth Council met. Medical teams kept him alive with machines and drugs, but everyone knew he did not have long. The council members gathered quickly. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, and scientists all came to hear what this dying alien had to say. Secretary General Yuki Tanaka stood before him. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but those eyes had seen humanity through 3 colony wars and a dozen crises. She knew how to stay calm when others panicked. "You asked to speak to us," she said gently. "We are listening." Korath Sen coughed. More green blood came up, but he forced himself to speak. "I was a member of the Ethics Tribunal of the Concord of Ascended Species," he began. "Do you know what the Concord is?" "We know of it," said Admiral James Okonkwo, a tall man with a deep voice. "An alliance of over 400 alien civilizations. We have requested membership 3 times. Each time, we were told we were not ready." "You were not rejected because you were not ready," Korath Sen said. "You were rejected because they were afraid of you." Silence fell over the great hall. "Afraid?" Tanaka asked. "We are one of the youngest species in the galaxy. We have only 12 colony systems. The Concord has thousands. Why would they fear us?" The alien made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. "Because you are aberrant. That is their word. Aberrant. It means broken, wrong, dangerous." He paused to catch his breath. In the 10,000 years since the Concord was formed, they have watched every new species that discovered space travel. Most species are peaceful. They evolved on gentle worlds with plenty of food and stable weather. They learned cooperation because life was easy. They joined the Concord happily and became productive members of galactic civilization. "And humanity?" Okonkwo asked. "Humanity evolved on a death world." The words hung in the air. Korath Sen continued. "Your planet has ice ages that freeze half the surface, volcanoes that block out the sun, predators in every environment, diseases that kill millions. Your ancestors did not learn cooperation because life was easy. They learned it because life was trying to kill them every single day, and they refused to die." He looked around the room at the human faces watching him. "Do you know what the Concord found when they first observed your species? They found beings who hunted animals 10 times their size. They found beings who crossed oceans on wooden boats just to see what was on the other side. They found beings who split the atom and immediately built weapons with it. They found beings who reached space by strapping themselves to controlled explosions." Korath Sen's voice grew stronger, fueled by something beyond his broken body. "Every other species in the galaxy reached space through careful, peaceful development over thousands of years. Humanity did it in less than a century, driven by war. Your people did not reach for the stars because they wanted to explore. They reached for the stars because they were competing to destroy each other, and space was the next battlefield." General Valentina Sorokina, a woman with iron-gray hair and cold blue eyes, stepped forward. "You still haven't told us why you're here." "I am here because the Concord has voted," Korath Sen said. "The vote was taken 6 cycles ago. I was one of the judges on the ethics tribunal. I voted against the motion. I lost. What motion? Tanaka asked, though something in her voice suggested she already knew. The motion to purify your species. The alien's eyes met hers. In 72 galactic cycles, approximately 18 of your months, a purification fleet will arrive in your space. They will sterilize your colony worlds first, then move to Earth. Every human being in existence will be killed. Your cities will be burned. Your history will be erased. It will be as if humanity never existed. The hall erupted in shouts and chaos. Guards raised weapons. Politicians screamed at each other. But Tanaka raised her hand. And slowly, painfully, silence returned. Why are you telling us this? She asked. You voted against it. But you are still Concord. Why betray them? Korath Sen was quiet for a long moment. Because the Concord was created to protect civilizations, not destroy them. Because I have spent my entire life believing in justice. And this is not justice. This is murder dressed in pretty words. He coughed again. And because I watched what your species did during what you call the Second World War. I watched how you fought against tyranny. How you sacrificed millions to stop evil from spreading. The Concord believes you are monsters. I believe you are something else entirely. What do you believe we are? Sorokina asked. Survivors, fighters, the most stubborn, most adaptable, most terrifying species this galaxy has ever produced. The alien smiled, and it was a terrible, beautiful thing. The Concord fears you because they do not understand you. They see only the violence. They do not see the love that drives it, the loyalty, the willingness to die for each other. His body was failing now. The machines were beeping warnings. Medical teams rushed forward, but Korath Sen waved them away. I have one last thing to say, he whispered. Tanaka leaned close. We're listening. They fear you because you do not know your own strength. You have always fought among yourselves, so you have never seen what you could do if you united. Perhaps it is time to show them. His eyes began to close. Perhaps it is time to show them why they were right to be afraid. He died then. The machines went silent. The alien who had crossed the galaxy to warn humanity took his last breath on a world that was not his own. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Secretary General Tanaka stood up straight. Her kind eyes had changed. Something hard had entered them. Something that had been sleeping in humanity since the first human picked up a rock and decided to fight back against a world that wanted to kill them. You heard him, she said quietly. We have 18 months. I suggest we use them wisely. The meeting that followed would change the course of galactic history. But that was still to come. For now, humanity stood at the edge of extinction and faced a simple choice. Submit and die, or fight and maybe survive. They had made that choice before. On the plains of Africa, in the trenches of Europe, on the beaches of Normandy, they would make it again. The news spread across human space like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every colony knew. Within days, every human being who could access a screen had seen Korath Sen's final warning. The reaction was chaos. On Earth, riots broke out in 12 major cities. On Mars, the colonial government declared emergency law. On the outer colonies, families packed their ships and fled deeper into unexplored space, hoping to hide from the coming storm. But in Geneva, in the Great Hall of the United Earth Council, the chaos took a different form. It took the form of argument. We must surrender, Secretary General Tanaka said. Her voice was tired. She had not slept in 3 days. The Concord has 400 species, thousands of worlds, millions of ships. We cannot fight that. We must reach out to them, show them we can change, that we can be peaceful members of their community. Admiral Okonkwo slammed his fist on the table. Surrender? They voted to kill every man, woman, and child in our species. This is not a war we can negotiate. This is extermination. You don't negotiate with someone who wants to erase you from existence. Then what do you suggest? Tanaka demanded. Fight? With what? Our 12 systems against their thousands? Our 100 warships against their millions? We dig in, Okonkwo said. We fortify every world. We mine every approach. We make them pay for every inch of space with blood. Maybe we can't win, but we can make victory so expensive that they decide we're not worth the cost. General Sorokina, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. Her voice was quiet. but it cut through the argument like a knife. You are both thinking too small. Everyone turned to look at her. Secretary General, you want to surrender because you think we cannot win. Admiral, you want to defend because you think we can only lose slowly. Both of you have already accepted defeat. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. I propose something different. I propose we attack. Attack? Tanaka's voice was sharp with disbelief. Attack the Concord? With what forces? Against what targets? That is what we need to discover. Sorokina turned back to face them. The alien gave us 18 months. That is not much time to build a defense, but it is enough time to find their weakness. Every enemy has one. We need to find theirs and strike it before they strike us. The argument continued for hours. In the end, no decision was reached. The council was too divided, but something had changed. The question was no longer whether humanity would fight. The question was, how? Far across the galaxy, in a chamber that glowed with soft purple light, another meeting was taking place. High Arbiter Thesson Cole stood before the assembly of voices, the ruling body of the Concord of Ascended Species. He was a tall being, his body covered in smooth white skin that rippled like water when he moved. His eyes were black pools that reflected no light. The vote has been recorded, he announced. The human species has been classified as aberrant. Purification has been authorized. The fleet will depart in 40 cycles. A voice rose from the assembly. It belonged to a being called Yenroth Mole, a representative of the Thessic species. High Arbiter, I must object once more. The humans have done nothing to threaten the Concord directly. They have kept to their small corner of the galaxy. Is extermination truly necessary? Thesson Cole's expression did not change. You speak from ignorance, representative. Allow me to educate you. He waved his hand, and images appeared in the air above the assembly. Images of human history. Observe, Thesson Cole said. This is a human ritual called war. They have engaged in it continuously since they developed civilization. Millions of their own kind, killed by their own hands. No other species in conquered history has shown such sustained violence against itself. The images changed. Now they showed human weapons, swords, guns, tanks, nuclear explosions. They discovered how to split atoms, Thesson Cole continued. Within years, they had built weapons that could destroy cities. Within decades, they had built enough to destroy their own world, several times over. And they did this while fighting among themselves. Imagine what they would do if they united against an external enemy. More images. Human soldiers fighting in mud and snow. Human ships launching into space. Human colonies spreading across the stars. They expand faster than any species we have ever recorded. They adapt to environments that would kill most beings. They survive on worlds that should be uninhabitable. And everywhere they go, they carry their violence with them. Thesson Cole turned to face the assembly directly. The humans are not a threat today. But in 100 years? 1,000? They breed quickly. They innovate constantly. They never stop pushing forward. If we allow them to grow unchecked, they will eventually challenge the Concord itself. And when that day comes, we may not be able to stop them. So we kill them now, Yenroth Mole said quietly. While they are still weak, we purify them now, Thesson Cole corrected. While we still can, it is not cruelty, it is survival. It is protecting the peace and stability that the Concord has maintained for 10,000 years. The assembly fell silent. No more objections were raised. Back on Earth, Lieutenant David Chen sat alone in a small room filled with computer screens. He was young, barely 30, with tired eyes and fingers that never stopped moving across keyboards. His job was to analyze the data recovered from Korath Sen's ship. Most of it was standard alien technology. Navigation systems, communication logs, life support data, but buried deep in the ship's memory, hidden behind layers of encryption that had taken Chen 2 weeks to crack. He found something else. Coordinates. Not just any coordinates. Coordinates to a place that Korath Sen had marked with a single word. Graveyard. Chen dug deeper. He found fragments of files, pieces of information that told a terrible story. The humans were not the first species to be marked for purification. They were the 14th. Over 50,000 years, the Concord had exterminated 13 other species. 13 entire civilizations, erased from existence. Their worlds were empty now. Their cities were dust. Their people were gone. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was why they had been killed. Chen read the reasons in the fragmented files. One species was too aggressive, another was too independent, a third refused to follow Concord laws, a fourth asked too many questions. Every single species had been killed for the same basic reason. They did not fit in. They did not behave the way the Concord wanted them to behave. They were different, difficult, dangerous, aberrant. Chen leaned back in his chair, his heart pounding. The Concord did not kill species because they were threats. They killed species because they were afraid of anything they could not control. And now humanity was next on the list. He reached for his communicator and called General Sorokina directly. "General, I found something," he said. "Something that changes everything. We need to talk. And we need to go to these coordinates, 6,000 light-years away, in a place the Concord believed was empty. Something waited. Something that had been hiding for thousands of years. Something that had also been marked for purification once, long ago. Something that had survived. And that something had been waiting for a species like humanity. A species that might finally have the strength to fight back. The graveyard was not just a place of death. It was also a place of secrets. And those secrets were about to change the galaxy forever. The stealth cruiser Defiant slipped through space like a ghost. Its hull was painted black and covered with materials that absorbed sensor signals. Its engines ran cold and quiet. Even its crew moved carefully, speaking in whispers, as if the emptiness around them might hear. Captain Amara Osei stood on the bridge, watching the stars through the main viewport. She was a tall woman with dark skin and eyes that missed nothing. 20 years in the fleet had taught her patience, but this mission was testing that patience to its limits. "How much farther?" she asked. Lieutenant Chen looked up from his navigation console. 2 more hours, Captain. The coordinates are in a region of space that the Concord has marked as forbidden. No ships are supposed to enter, which is why we're entering it," Osei said with a thin smile. "What do the sensors show?" "Nothing, Captain. No planets, no stations, no ships, just empty space." But empty space did not have coordinates marked in a dying alien's secret files. Empty space was not called graveyard. Something was out there. Osei could feel it. 2 hours later, they found it. At first, it looked like an asteroid field. Thousands of rocks floating in the darkness, spinning slowly in the void. But as the Defiant moved closer, the crew began to see that these were not natural asteroids. They were ruins, buildings, ships, entire cities, torn apart and left to drift. The remains of civilizations that had been destroyed so completely that only fragments survived. "My God," whispered Chen. "It's all true. The 13 species, they're all here." But Osei had noticed something else. Among the ruins, there were lights. Small, dim, but definitely there. Something was alive in this graveyard of dead worlds. "Take us in," she ordered. Slowly. "And keep weapons ready." They found the entrance hidden behind a massive chunk of what might once have been a cathedral. A door carved into an asteroid, large enough for their ship to pass through. As they approached, the door opened silently, inviting them inside. The chamber beyond was vast. It was carved from the heart of a mountain-sized rock, filled with structures and machinery that looked ancient but still functional. And standing in the center, waiting for them, was a being unlike anything the humans had ever seen. It was made of crystal. Living crystal, that shifted and changed color as it moved. Its shape was roughly humanoid, but it had no face, no features, just a smooth surface that somehow conveyed intelligence and age and patience. "Welcome, humans," it said. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "We have been waiting for you for a very long time." Osei stepped forward. "Who are you? What is this place?" "I am called the Rememberer. I am the last of the Kreth, and this place is the sanctuary of the Defiant." The crystal, being gestured at the chamber around them. "The Concord believes they destroyed us 12,000 years ago. They were wrong. Other beings emerged from the shadows. 6 different species, each stranger than the last. Some had too many limbs. Some had no limbs at all. Some floated. Some crawled. But they all shared one thing. They looked at the humans with hope in their eyes. "You are the survivors," Chen said quietly. "From the 13 species that were purified. 6 of the 13, the Rememberer corrected. 7 were completely destroyed. We 6 managed to save some of our people. A few thousand from each species. hidden here where the Concord cannot find us. We have lived in secret for thousands of years, preserving our cultures, our knowledge, our memories. Why? Osei asked. Why hide? Why not fight back? Because we could not win, the Rememberer said simply. The Concord is too powerful. They control too much. Every species that tried to fight them was crushed. We chose survival instead of glory. We chose to wait. Wait for what? The crystal being moved closer, and Osei could feel something like warmth coming from its surface. Wait for someone who could do what we could not. Someone strong enough to challenge the Concord. Someone stubborn enough to refuse defeat. The Rememberer paused. Someone like you. Captain Osei felt the weight of those words settle on her shoulders. You've been watching us. We have watched every new species that discovered space travel. Most are peaceful, gentle. They join the Concord willingly, and forget that freedom ever mattered. But humanity is different. The Rememberer's colors shifted to something brighter. You fight. You argue. You compete. You are messy and violent and unpredictable. And you never, ever give up. The Concord calls us aberrant, Chen said. The Concord is afraid of anything it cannot control. But what they call aberrant, we call hope. The Rememberer led them deeper into the sanctuary. There, in a chamber filled with glowing screens and humming machines, they found what they had come for. This is everything we have gathered in 12,000 years, the Rememberer said. Weapon designs the Concord believes were lost. Maps of their territory, locations of their fleets, and most importantly, this. An image appeared on the largest screen. It showed a network of stations spread across the galaxy, connected by lines of energy. The Nexus array, the Rememberer explained. It is how the Concord maintains control. Every ship, every station, every planet in the Concord depends on this network for communication and navigation. Without it, their fleets cannot coordinate. Their governments cannot talk to each other. Their entire civilization becomes 400 separate pieces instead of one unified whole. Osei studied the image. You want us to destroy it. I want you to understand that it is possible. The Concord seems invincible, but they are not. They have one great weakness. They have never faced an enemy who understood how to hurt them. Every species they have purified tried to fight their fleets directly. All of them lost. But you, humanity, you think differently. You do not fight fair. You look for weaknesses and exploit them. You innovate, you adapt, you cheat. Despite the gravity of the moment, Osei almost laughed. In human culture, we call that strategy. Call it what you wish. It is why we believe you can succeed where we failed. They spent 3 days in the sanctuary, downloading information, talking to the survivors, learning everything they could. The 6 hidden species shared technology and knowledge freely. They had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. But on the last night, the Rememberer came to Captain Osei privately. There is something you must understand, the crystal being said. Something we have not shared with the others. What is it? The Concord's fear of humanity is not irrational. When we first observed your species, we saw what they saw. We saw the violence, the wars, the weapons. The Rememberer paused. We saw a species that could burn the galaxy, if it chose to. Osei was silent for a moment. Are you saying they're right to try to exterminate us? I am saying that power is neutral. It is how power is used that matters. Humanity has the potential to be the greatest force for destruction the galaxy has ever seen. But you also have the potential to be the greatest force for protection. The question is which path you will choose. And if we choose wrong, the Rememberer's colors dimmed. Then perhaps the Concord was right to fear you. And perhaps the galaxy would be better off without your kind. It was not a threat. It was simply truth. And Osei respected truth, even when it was hard to hear. We won't choose wrong, she said quietly. Humanity has done terrible things. We've hurt each other in ways that shame us. But we've also built beautiful things. Art, music, love, kindness. We are not monsters, no matter what the Conquered believes. Then prove it, the Rememberer said. Fight for your survival, yes, but fight for something more. Fight to create a galaxy where no species is ever purified again. Fight to replace fear with freedom. Fight not just for humanity, but for all the species who will come after you. Osei nodded slowly. I understand. The Defiant left the sanctuary the next morning. carrying more than just data and weapons. It carried a burden, a responsibility, the hope of 6 ancient species who had waited thousands of years for someone to finally stand up to the Concord. As the ship entered hyperspace, Captain Osei looked back at the graveyard one last time. "We won't let them add Earth to that collection," she said quietly. "I swear it." The journey home would take 2 weeks. In that time, Osei would plan. She would think. She would prepare. And when she arrived, she would tell humanity what she had learned. The war for survival was about to begin. When Captain Osei returned to Earth, she brought more than information. She brought something that humanity had not felt in a long time. Hope. The Council listened to her report in silence. They watched the recordings from the sanctuary. They studied the maps, the weapon designs, the weakness in the Nexus array, and when she finished, something changed in the room. The argument stopped. The factions that had been fighting for weeks suddenly found common ground, because now they understood something important. Victory was possible. Difficult, costly, but possible. Secretary General Tanaka stood up. The tired woman who had argued for surrender was gone. In her place stood something harder, something that had been forged in the fires of impossible choice. "We have 15 months before the purification fleet arrives," she said. "That is not enough time to match the Concord ship for ship. But it is enough time to hurt them, to make them bleed, to show them that humanity is not prey." She turned to General Sorokina. "You asked for the chance to attack. You have it. What do you need?" Sorokina smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. "Everything. Every shipyard, every factory, every scientist and engineer and worker. I need humanity to do what it does best. Build weapons and prepare for war. You will have it," Tanaka said. "Admiral Okonkwo, you will coordinate the defensive preparations. If the attack fails, we need fallback positions. General Sorokina, you will plan the assault on the Nexus array." She looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. No more arguments. No more factions. From this moment forward, we are one species with one purpose: survival. Anyone who disagrees can leave now. No one left. The months that followed were unlike anything in human history. Every colony, every nation, every city turned its attention to a single goal. Factories that had made consumer goods now made warships. Universities that had studied philosophy now studied alien technology. Children who had played games now trained to be soldiers. The hidden species from the sanctuary sent advisors. Ancient beings who had survived the Concord's purification shared secrets that humanity's scientists could barely understand. But humans were fast learners. They always had been. The Concord had calculated that it would take humanity 50 years to build a fleet capable of threatening them. Humanity did it in 12 months, but they did not simply copy the technology they had been given. They improved it. Human engineers looked at alien designs and asked questions that the aliens had never thought to ask. What if we made it smaller? What if we made it faster? What if we made it do something it was never meant to do? The results were terrifying. Ships that could enter hyperspace inside a gravity well, something every species in the galaxy believed was impossible. Missiles that could track their targets through dimensional barriers, armor that healed itself when damaged, and soldiers in powered suits that turned ordinary humans into walking tanks. General Sorokina oversaw the creation of the assault force personally. She handpicked every captain, every pilot, every marine. She trained them herself, pushing them to their limits and beyond. "The Concord believes we are animals," she told them. "Savage beasts that fight without thought or strategy. We are going to show them how wrong they are. We are going to hit them where they least expect it, destroy something they thought was untouchable, and then vanish before they can respond." "And if we fail?" asked one young officer. Sorokina's eyes were cold. "Then we die. But we die fighting. We die free. And we die making them afraid of what comes next." 3 months before the purification fleet was scheduled to arrive, the assault began. The Nexus array consisted of 12 primary stations spread across Concord space. Each station was heavily defended. Each station was believed to be impregnable. The Concord had never imagined that anyone would be foolish enough to attack all 12 simultaneously. They were wrong. Human fleets appeared out of hyperspace at all 12 locations at exactly the same moment. The Concord defenders were caught completely off guard. They had expected months of warning. They had expected to see the enemy coming from light years away. Instead, human ships materialized practically on top of them, already firing. General Sorokina led the attack on the primary station herself. Her flagship, the Unconquered, was the first ship through the defensive lines. Around her, human vessels died by the dozens, but they kept coming. They kept fighting. They kept pushing forward. "We're taking heavy losses," her tactical officer reported. 40% of the fleet is gone. "Keep going," Sorokina said calmly. "The station is all that matters." The Concord defenders fought with everything they had. Their ships were more advanced. Their weapons were more powerful. Their tactics were refined over 10,000 years of galactic dominance. But they had never faced an enemy like this. Humans did not fight like other species. They did not retreat when the odds turned against them. They did not surrender when their ships were crippled. They flew burning vessels into enemy formations. They ejected from destroyed ships and fired hand weapons at passing cruisers. They fought with a fury that the Concord had never encountered. On the bridge of his command ship, High Arbiter Thesson Cole watched the battle reports with growing horror. "This is impossible," he said. "Their ships should not be able to do this. Their tactics should not work. How are they winning?" "They are not winning, High Arbiter," his tactical advisor said. "They are losing ships at 3 times our rate. They cannot sustain this assault." "Then why do they keep attacking?" The advisor had no answer. At Station 7, Captain Amara Osei led her squadron through the final defensive line. The Defiant had taken heavy damage. Half her crew was dead. But the station was ahead of them, unprotected. "All ships, target the central power core," she ordered. "Fire everything you have." Missiles streaked toward the station. Energy beams carved through its hull. And then, with a flash of light that could be seen from 1,000 kilometers away, Station 7 exploded. One by one, across the galaxy, the other stations fell. At each location, human forces paid a terrible price. 60% of the assault fleet was destroyed. Thousands of soldiers died. But when the last station was gone, so was the Nexus array. The Concord's great network, the system that had coordinated their civilization for 10,000 years, went dark. General Sorokina, wounded but alive, broadcast a message on all Concord frequencies. Her face was bloody. Her uniform was torn, but her voice was steady. "This is General Valentina Sorokina of the United Earth Fleet. You voted to exterminate our species. You called us aberrant. You said we were too dangerous to live." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was like iron. "You were right to be afraid. Your Nexus array is gone. Your fleets can no longer coordinate. Your worlds can no longer communicate. The unity that made you strong is now shattered. You have a choice. You can continue with your purification. You can send your fleets to Earth one at a time, and we will destroy them one at a time. Or you can stop. You can talk. You can treat us as equals instead of animals to be slaughtered. The choice is yours. But know this. We are not afraid to die. We have been dying since we first crawled out of the oceans of our world. Death does not scare us. What scares us is living as slaves. What scares us is watching our children grow up in chains. So come, if you dare. Bring your fleets. Bring your weapons. Bring everything you have. We will be waiting, and we will show you why your ancestors were right to be afraid of the dark." She cut the transmission. Around her, the survivors of the assault force began the long journey home. They had done the impossible. They had struck at the heart of the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. Now they had to survive what came next. The purification fleet was still coming, but it was no longer one unstoppable force. It was 400 separate forces, each operating alone, each unable to coordinate with the others. The war for humanity's survival had truly begun, and humanity intended to win. The months that followed the destruction of the Nexus array were the darkest and brightest in human history. Without coordination, the purification fleet arrived in human space not as one overwhelming force, but as scattered groups. Some arrived weeks apart. Some arrived alone, and humanity was waiting for them. Human fleets used tactics that the Concord had never seen. They hid in asteroid fields and struck without warning. They used civilian ships as decoys. They attacked supply lines and communication relays. They fought dirty, because fighting clean meant dying. The first Concord battle group to reach human space was destroyed in 3 days. The second lasted 4. By the time the third arrived, Its commanders had heard stories from the survivors, stories of human ships that seemed to appear from nowhere, stories of soldiers who kept fighting even after their bodies should have stopped, stories of a species that simply refused to understand that it was supposed to lose. The losses on both sides were terrible. Human colonies burned, alien fleets were shattered. The space between stars became a graveyard of broken ships and frozen bodies. But slowly, impossibly, humanity began to win. Not through strength. The Concord still had more ships, more weapons, more resources. Humanity won through something else. Something that the aliens could not understand and could not match. They won through stubbornness. Every time a human world fell, the survivors regrouped and kept fighting. Every time a fleet was destroyed, new ships were built to replace it. Every time the Concord announced that humanity was finished, humans proved them wrong. After 6 months of warfare, the cracks in the Concord began to show. The first species to break from the alliance was the Velith, the same species that Korath Sen had belonged to. They sent a message to Earth asking for peace talks. Within weeks, 16 more species had done the same. The Concord that had seemed unbreakable was falling apart. Without the Nexus array, old conflicts between member species began to resurface. Trade disputes became armed standoffs. Border disagreements became small wars. The unity that had held 400 civilizations together for 10,000 years crumbled like sand. High Arbiter Thesson Cole watched his alliance die and could do nothing to stop it. 8 months after the destruction of the Nexus array, he stood alone in his chamber, staring at a galaxy map that showed the chaos spreading. 200 species had left the Concord. 50 more were in active rebellion. The Purification Fleet had lost half its ships, and the other half was refusing to continue the campaign. His advisor entered quietly. High Arbiter, the humans have requested a meeting. They wish to negotiate. Negotiate. Thesson Cole spoke the word, like it was poison. They destroy everything we have built, and now they wish to negotiate. They say they are willing to end the war. But they have conditions. Of course they do. He was quiet for a long moment. Very well. Arrange the meeting. Let us see what the aberrant species demands. The negotiation took place on a neutral station, one of the few places in the galaxy where neither side had forces nearby. Secretary General Tanaka led the human delegation. General Sorokina stood at her side, her uniform decorated with medals from a dozen battles. On the other side of the table sat High Arbiter Thesson Cole, alone. His advisors had abandoned him. His allies had betrayed him. He was the last true believer in a cause that had already been lost. You have won, he said simply. Tell me your terms. Tanaka looked at him for a long moment. She remembered the woman she had been 18 months ago, the one who had wanted to surrender. That woman was gone. In her place was someone who had watched her species fight and bleed and die for the right to exist. We don't want conquest, she said. We don't want revenge. We don't want tribute or submission. Then what do you want? We want a seat at the table. A real seat. We want the species that you marked for purification, the ones who survived in the graveyard, restored to the galactic community. We want the Concord reformed into something that serves all species, not just the ones who follow your rules. Sorokina leaned forward. And we want a promise, enforced by human fleets if necessary. No species will ever again be exterminated for being different. No species will ever again be purified because they don't fit into your idea of what civilization should look like. Thesson Cole's black eyes studied them. You ask us to destroy everything we have built over 10,000 years. No, Tanaka said. We ask you to build something better. The Concord was created to bring peace to the galaxy, but you turned it into a tool of control. You used it to crush anyone who didn't think like you. That's not peace. That's tyranny with a pretty name. And if I refuse? Sorokina's smile was thin and cold. Then we continue. We've already destroyed your network. We've already broken your alliance. We can destroy the rest. But we would rather not. We would rather help you build something new. Why? Thesson Cole's voice was genuinely curious. We tried to exterminate you. We killed thousands of your people. Why would you offer us mercy? Tanaka's answer was quiet but firm. Because we're not like you. We fight when we have to. We kill when we must. But we don't enjoy it. And we don't continue wars that don't need to be fought. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Humanity has done terrible things. We've fought each other for stupid reasons. We've destroyed civilizations on our own world. We know what we're capable of." She turned back to face him. "But we also know what we can become. We can be cruel, but we can also be kind. We can destroy, but we can also build. We can hate, but we can also love." The Concord feared us because they only saw the darkness. They didn't see the light. They didn't understand that the same strength that makes us dangerous also makes us capable of great good. She sat back down and looked directly into his black eyes. "This is our offer. Join us in building a better galaxy, or watch us build it without you. The choice is yours." Thesson Cole was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was tired. "You truly believe this is possible? After everything that has happened?" "I have to believe it," Tanaka said. "Otherwise, what are we fighting for?" The negotiation lasted 3 more days. In the end, an agreement was reached. The Concord of Ascended Species was dissolved. In its place, a new organization was formed, the Galactic Assembly. Every species would have a voice. Every species would have rights. And a new law was written into the founding documents, a law that could never be changed. No species would ever be purified again. The survivors from the graveyard were brought home. After thousands of years of hiding, the Kreth and the other ancient species took their places in the new assembly. They wept when they saw their names restored to galactic records. They wept when they heard their languages spoken in the halls of power. And humanity took its seat at the table. Not as conquerors, not as masters, just as members, just as equals. 100 years later, the galaxy was a different place. The wars were over. The old hatreds were fading. Species that had once feared each other now traded and talked and sometimes even formed families together. It was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still disagreements, still moments of darkness, but there was also hope. On a small colony world at the edge of human space, a little girl looked up at the stars. Her grandmother sat beside her, old and tired but still sharp. "Grandma, what are the aliens like?" The grandmother smiled. She had lived through the war. She had lost friends and family. She had seen the best and worst of both species. "They're our friends now, little one." "Were they always our friends?" "No," the grandmother said honestly. "They weren't. They were scared of us once. They thought we were monsters. They tried to hurt us very badly. What happened? We showed them they were wrong. We showed them that we could be trusted. It took a lot of work, a lot of talking, a lot of proving ourselves." She put her arm around the child. "But in the end, they understood. We're not monsters. We're just people. Different from them, but not worse." The little girl thought about this. "Are we still scary?" The grandmother laughed softly. "Maybe a little, but that's okay. Sometimes being a little scary keeps everyone honest." Above them, ships from a dozen different species crossed the sky, traveling to worlds that humans had never seen. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, and now, finally, humanity was free to explore it, not as aberrants, not as monsters, not as enemies, just as citizens of a galaxy that had finally learned to embrace difference instead of fearing it. And, in the halls of the Galactic Assembly, there was a saying that every diplomat knew, a reminder of what had happened when fear ruled the stars. "Do not threaten humanity with extinction. They take it personally." It was meant as a warning, but over time, it became something else. It became a promise that humanity would always stand against tyranny, would always fight for freedom, would always protect those who could not protect themselves, because that was what humans did. They survived, they adapted, they fought, and they never, ever gave up.